Welcome to the Awesome Earthkind podcast. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. And would you please introduce yourself and tell us who you are, where you work, what kind of work you do, where you live?
So I'm Christina Matheson. I live on Long Island, New York, which is kind of near New York City, but not really. I am the director of curriculum at Leap EDU, and I have created curriculum for our Green EDU program focused on solar energy for real estate professionals and for homeowners, and also energy efficiency.
And why did you go into solar? And what motivates you, Christina?
Well, I got into solar as my next career. So I had a career before that. I had a good friend that owned a solar company. And because I work like I own the business no matter what I do, I wanted to use my skills for the benefit of someone that I knew. So I didn't really understand much about it. It was in its infancy, as far as social adoption back in 2010. And about a week after I was there, I thought, why doesn't everybody do this? And it became something that I got very involved in. I learned all aspects of the business. I eventually got onto the sales and marketing side. And that's where I really started to discover my next path was going to be the niche of solar and real estate. So that's where I am now.
And so why solar? Why this place? I mean, what do you believe in it? Why do you believe in it so much?
I believe that solar energy, the installation of solar energy on a home is one of the greatest investments that people can make. The American dream has long been noted as home ownership, right? One day you pay off that home and you're free and clear and you have and we all live happily ever after. And installing solar is very, very similar in that when you own the solar system, when you pay it off and it's not an extra payment, it's the same payment or less than you had before when you were using utility electricity. When that's paid off for the remaining lifespan of a solar system, which can be up to 40 years, that is a revenue producing asset on your home. It generates energy until it stops. So I thought it was one of the greatest things that anybody could do. And I almost became an instant advocate from the start. And as I learned more and more and more, it got worse.
Got better. It got better.
It got better. I mean, I got better at it. I got better at explaining it because at the time when I used to tell people that I went into the solar business, they would look at me like I worked on the Starship Enterprise. They didn't understand. We didn't have solar like we do now. People see it. They hear about it on the news. They see famous buildings and, whether it's commercial or residential, somebody in the neighborhood has it. And it wasn't like that then. So people were just amazed, like, does that really work? And I think that through the evolution of time, we've determined that, yes, it does in fact really work. And the second flow of questions came. How will it work for my house? If I have a 2,000 square foot house, how many panels do I need? What will it cost? And that started a whole new wave of other questions. And then we got to, well, how does it affect the value of my home? And that's where I really had to dig in and almost take on a next career, which was real estate, to really learn how the real estate community was treating this. And in fact, they had no training. So that's where I dug deeper yet again.
And so now that's what you really focus on, right? So tell us what kind of work you're doing now and what are the issues that you're dealing with?
So I am the director of curriculum at Leap EDU, which is a real estate pre-licensing and continuing education school. I wrote a course about 5 years ago that explained how solar worked, not the mechanics of it, not the technical side of it, but just what it did so people had a frame of reference. And I learned all about the real estate side of it so that I could teach this course. The funny thing was that when I started this, it was very rudimentary. I was not a trained educator. I was just a passionate human being that had a really good knowledge of solar and why it's of benefit. And I started to go around to real estate offices. I would bring bagels and I would tell them about solar, thinking, I know that this is the greatest thing, and I don't understand why people aren't standing at the door at 8 o'clock when we open them to come in to sign up to start their process to go solar, to different offices. And a couple of things happened. First, people didn't understand how this affected home value. And what I didn't expect to happen was that they would teach me. So that was really the beginning of my digging way deeper and learning way more about real estate, and the fact that the appraiser in the whole scheme of things. So you have a real estate agent, you have an attorney, you have a home inspector, you have an appraiser, you have a lender. There's all, an array of people that are involved when you sell one house and buy another house. And when you do that, the appraiser is kind of the god of valuation. The appraiser determines, based upon market value, what that home is worth. So with no knowledge on the appraisal side, with no knowledge on the real estate agent and broker side, with no knowledge on the attorney side, I was upended, and I had to really figure out how this was going to benefit everybody. Because quite frankly, when solar leasing came around and I discovered there was a UCC filing on some of these different finance options, I knew that I knew enough about real estate at that time to know that when you got your title insurance, so your title is largely based on what's on the deed, if there's any liens on the deed, if there are any encumbrances, they're called. And sometimes when people leased then and now, or people got a power purchase agreement or even some finance options, there was what's called a UCC1 filing placed on that property. And I knew that people would lose it when they discovered that this existed and they didn't understand why. So I dug deeper, and this is what I explain in the classes that I teach to help better enable real estate agents to help those solar homeowners when it comes time to sell the house.
So what is a UCC filing and what does it mean? And then could you also explain the different types of financing that are available to homeowners and how that impacts them?
So a UCC filing is like a lien on the property. However, it's not a lien on the real property. It's a lien on the solar equipment. So what that means is if I lease my solar from ABC Solar Company and I decide that I want to sell my house, the same holds true for power purchase agreements, and we'll get into that. And the same holds true for some types of financing. I leased my solar, or however I did it, with ABC Solar Company. And because they have a large investment and I have agreed to usually a 20-year contract, if my home changes ownership, so if I sell my home to Mary, we're going to have to transfer all of this promissory stuff. So we agree to pay for the next 20 years. We agree that we're going to pay on time. This is the amount we're going to pay. In order to transfer that over, the UCC filing or the lien, it depends how it's done, but it oftentimes has to be removed and put on in the new person's name. So without any knowledge of this, people think there's a lien on the house similar to a mechanic's lien. So if you didn't pay you had your kitchen redone and you didn't pay that contractor, he could go to the authority having jurisdiction and file legal documents that say, in order for you to sell that house, that lien has to be paid or satisfied. So with the UCC, the title company is very, very much involved. So is the lender, with making sure this transfers over from the seller to the buyer. Or even if we refinance. So if we refinance, I still own my house, but I'm sometimes changing lenders. So if Chase Bank is my lender and I'm going to Wells Fargo is going to, in effect, pay Chase Bank what they owe them and we'll have a new loan. It will still be in my name. So sometimes that's a little bit easier. But with a sale of, I'm not going to own this anymore, Mary's going to own it, there's a lot that has to be done. And this UCC filing is something that the majority of professionals in real estate haven't been taught. It's not that they don't understand or they're incompetent. They haven't been taught. Just like if there was something new for us, if we're not taught, we don't understand it. So there are, in fact, 3 different ways that you can go solar. The first way is if you own it. So you go to the solar company, they plan out the whole system. This is true for however you want to do it. And you either have the money under the mattress, grandma gave it to you, or you take a loan. There's different loan products that are available, but let's just assume you took the money from under the mattress and you bought your solar system. That would mean that immediately, whatever the benefits of the solar were, so let's say your electric bill used to be $150 a month. You won't have the majority of that electric bill anymore. You will stay connected to the grid, and whatever percentage of your home energy usage that's satisfied with that solar system will be generated by the roof. If you have it in the roof or on the property somewhere, that solar will generate that amount of energy, and that's that amount that you do not have to pay to the utility. So ownership has a couple of advantages. Number one, you're absolutely controlling the cost of your energy. You are immediately adding appraisable value to your home because this becomes an asset that produces revenue. And you're eliminating your electric bill for years and years to come. So the savings if we were to just pull numbers out of the sky, a $30,000 investment may yield you $110,000 worth of energy over the life of the system. Because we have tax credits in place, ownership has many more advantages. So in New York State, we have a 26%, across the country, we have a 26% federal tax credit that goes against what you paid. I'll break down the numbers. We have a New York State tax credit of $5,000. And in New York City, in the 5 boroughs of New York City, we have a 20% property tax abatement. So let's say your solar system was $30,000. 26% of $30,000 is what you would get back in federal tax credits provided. Now, I am not a financial professional. I have to give the disclaimer, everyone should contact their finance professional about this. But the general rule of thumb is that if you paid into the system, if you were an employee and paid these taxes, and you paid enough in federal taxes, you'd get this back as a credit, not a deduction. So you'd actually get a check. Same holds true with the New York State tax credit. And the property tax abatement would be 20% over 4 years, meaning 20% of the cost of that solar system, which is $6,000, would be broken into 4 pieces for each year. And every year you would get a property tax abatement of $1,500 for the second year, $1,500 for the third, $1,500 for the fourth, and $1,500 for the fifth. You notice that I didn't say the first. It takes the Department of Finance a minute to catch up. So ownership, depending, what tax credits you're entitled to or that are available to you, is a great model because in many instances, you're having half of the system or more paid for by tax credits. So that's an incredible opportunity. The ownership model is by far the best because of the tax credits, because of the additional appraised value. It's the best way to go if that suits you. Again, your finance professional may be able to advise you better because I am not one. So when you lease solar, you are leasing the equipment for a defined amount every month. And many times that amount, it can go up every year. It can have what's called an escalator, or sometimes it doesn't. So it stays the same amount. Again, this is control. The perfect lease customer is a customer that does not have what's called a tax appetite. So for example, if you are a retired civil servant, a retired police officer, and you don't pay federal taxes, I'm going to say the disclaimer about the tax professional again, but if for whatever reason you're not eligible for that tax credit, you may consider leasing. The thing to be mindful of is that this is a 20-year agreement. There will probably be a UCC filing, which is by far not the end of the world. It's really designed to protect the homeowner, because if I sign this 20-year agreement and the average home ownership, let's say, is between 7 and 11 years, it has been until recently since the mortgage rates dropped so dramatically. But the odds were that in that 20-year period of time, I might sell my house. And if that UCC filing was not in place and the new person that bought my house didn't take that over, technically I'd still be responsible for those payments. And I don't want to pay for a solar system on a house that I don't own. That makes no sense. So that is a little piece of it. So leasing is another way to control your energy costs. In some of my classes that I teach, I talk about, so out of everybody in the room, when we used to do it live, and God willing, we'll do it live again very soon, I'd say, okay, so in the room, let's say there's 100 people, how many by a raise of hands are not going to be using electricity in the next 5 years? And everybody cracks up, but it's true. We all use electricity, even though we're using efficient things that use less electricity. We plug everything in, particularly if we have kids, right? Our kids are plugging all the devices in. So that's a lease. A power purchase agreement is not a lease and you don't own it. It just means that for all of the power that solar system makes, you are paying this rate, a rate of 15 cents, 18 cents, 12 cents, whatever it is in your agreement, per kilowatt hour. So a kilowatt hour is a measurement of energy, almost like ounces of water. That's the measurement of it. So you're paying that much per kilowatt hour, and whatever that system makes, you're agreeing to buy it at that price. It may or may not have an escalator, so every year it may go up. Many go up 2.9% per year. Some do not. The funny thing about it is that because, when I started to get into the real estate side of it, everything is about having rules and regulations and being able to be consistent and following all of the prescribed measures. The solar industry, even though we've been in it for a while, is considerably newer than real estate or any other industry. So we didn't really establish a template. The rules that may be in place are not there. So any given solar company may have 20 different iterations of any kind of contract, which can be challenging not only for the homeowner, but for the real estate professional who comes along later and tries to figure out, okay, Christina wants to move and Mary's going to buy the house, and what do we do? So without having that energy knowledge, without having that understanding of which finance methods there are and who actually owns that equipment, the real estate agents are at a bit of a loss. And, as a realtor, as a member of the National Association of Realtors, we have a code of ethics. And part of that code of ethics is that we must disclose all of the material facts about a property. Yet we haven't necessarily been trained on how to find out what those facts are. So there are challenges, and education, not only for real estate professionals, but for consumers, I believe is really the key to greater social adoption. People don't want to engage in a 20-year agreement or even own solar that has a 25-year warranty period. People are a little bit leery if they don't really understand it. And I think that they can be more leery if they had a friend on Facebook or a neighbor or someone who said, Aunt Susie went solar, and when she went to sell the house, it was a problem. Maybe it wasn't really a problem. Maybe the people that were involved in the transaction didn't fully understand it. However, that's something that we can totally fix through education. And I believe that greater social adoption of solar energy is a few hours of education away, when we're not trying to sell somebody something, to inform them enough or educate them enough to understand the benefits of it, but to go beyond that and to have a fuller spectrum of information available to homeowners that are considering solar and that have gone that way.
Great. So people can own with a loan, or they can get a lease, or they can do a power purchase agreement. What are the pros and cons of doing either of those, would you say?
Anytime we go solar, it's a good thing because it's cleaner energy. The thing that, many of us don't consider, because we don't consider the systems in our home. when you're burning oil or gas in the home, there's health consequences. So clean energy is better for the occupants of the home, and it's also better for the planet. We're using less fossil fuels, therefore carbon. That being said, the best way to go solar is to own it, unless of course you don't have those tax credits. You don't have the tax appetite. The pros of owning your solar is that it will add appraised value to your home. When, even if you took a loan, exactly what those payments are going to be, when they're going to end. And it's similar to home ownership, like that American dream that at 15 years and one day, I'm going to own this and I'm not going to make any more payments. So ownership is great. The con to it is that you have to get financing. Sometimes people come out of pocket, sometimes they don't. The best way to do it would be to include it in a mortgage. That's the best interest rate. It's the best way. So the pro is it's appraisable. The pro is it's going to add value to the house. It will be more desirable because there are not payments to a buyer if you choose to sell. The con of it is that you're going to have to find that money or take a loan. The pros of leasing and power purchase agreements is that they're usually no money down. You can get right into the solar contract. You are controlling the cost of your energy, and it is clean energy. The con is that in both of those scenarios, a third party is the owner of your solar system. And without the training, the array of real estate professionals that are involved in a transaction, and anybody who's ever bought or sold a house clearly knows this, right? You have all of these people that are part of the transaction. If they're not trained, there's a little bit of a learning curve. And I think the most important piece to this is the second generation homeowner, that person that's considering buying your home, it's almost like a little bit of knowledge is more dangerous than not knowing at all. Because many, many consumers believe that every solar system is an extra payment. And that couldn't be further from the truth. You're replacing your utility payment in large part with the solar payment. So the cons of that is that without that education, there's misinformation out there, and there are challenges to that. You also will not get all of the tax credits. So that 26% federal tax credit in your pocket is then going to the solar company. But again, if you don't have that tax appetite, that may be a consideration.
And then when you go to sell the home, you had mentioned a couple of things before about what happens. So if you just buy it, it's yours. There's no UCC things to be paying attention to. You're just selling your house and the solar system goes with it. If
Right.
there's a loan on it, though, or if it's a lease or a power purchase agreement with a UCC on it, what do people have to watch out for?
From the very beginning, I think that any homeowner that has installed solar ever, the most important thing that they can do is retain their documents. So oftentimes there's always some kind of tax benefit involved. So let's assume that you have gotten, you took these tax credits or whatever you did. We tend to take those documents and put them with that year's tax filing, and then they're gone. When we go to sell our house, our real estate professional needs to have that information, because they're going to be able to assess who owns the solar, what we have to do to transfer that. Oftentimes, that solar company, again, there's not really a compliance. There's no template that nobody says, well, this is how it goes. So you're going to have to read that agreement that you signed, and it may request that you let that solar company or that finance company know 60 days before you intend to transfer that system over to somebody else. Sometimes that somebody else or that second generation home buyer has to be approved by the solar company. So those documents and understanding what you signed are really the key to a successful, simple transaction. I think most importantly, you want to have an agent who is actually trained in this and who understands it and can prove to you that they've been certified, that they've taken at least a 3-hour class, that they understand how this works, because they're the ones that are going to have to explain it to a buyer. So with a combination of consumer awareness and education of the real estate community, this can be much, much simpler, but we're not there yet.
So is there one biggest thing that people should pay attention to?
When they're selling their house or when they're going solar?
Either, both.
So when you're going solar, I think the biggest piece of it is to determine whether or not you can use those tax credits. While we would like to think that every vendor and every contractor that we could ever possibly work with on planet Earth is perfectly honest, and the salespeople are perfectly honest, there is the slightest possibility that maybe one company wants you to do it their way and not the way that's better for you. So while I don't believe that people are bad, I just believe that in misinformation. So that, with that being said, consult your tax professional and find out if you pay taxes, if you have the tax appetite to take a tax credit is a real good idea. The next thing is, when you go solar, do your homework. Ask for references. I understand that many solar companies have done the door-to-door canvassing thing, and they're able to reach out to many people and help them go solar that way by bringing awareness. Even though that person comes to your door, please check out the company that you're doing that with, just like you would with any other home improvement contractor, particularly because the roof may be the most important structure of the home. Of all of the other things that we have in the house, we could have gotten the best of everything, and if it rains inside when it rains outside, we have a problem. So working with a qualified contractor that has all of the right insurance and has all of the right everything and has customers that are happy to share their experience with you because it was great, that's who you want. In terms of transferring, you're thinking of selling the house, I've trained, over somewhere around 1,500 real estate agents. The number keeps increasing. Some of them get it and some of them don't. You want to have a real estate agent that really gets it and that can really explain to you. You want them to guide you through the process and not for you to have to guide them.
Excellent. So get a good real estate agent. Make sure they're competent, know what they're talking about, and have done solar and understand solar and the ins and out.
It's been trained.
Be trained. Make sure also you're a good consumer and that you're shopping things around and making sure that you're checking references on people, because that's really critical. I always urge people to actually get 3 bids and then evaluate the bids, and don't necessarily go with the cheaper one, but go with the one that's the best value.
Yes.
And then also,
cheap is expensive, Ron.
What's that?
Cheap is expensive.
Cheap is expensive. It costs you a lot in the long term, right? So if you get something cheap and it goes on your roof and your roof leaks, boy, now you've got a major hassle, right? Or if the system stops working and there's not a good warranty in back of it for whatever reason. So yeah, there's definitely, you pay the price. You can pay me now or pay me later, as the old saying used to go, right?
Absolutely.
And then the other piece is, if you're borrowing the money in one way, shape, or fashion, either borrowing as a loan or borrowing as a lease in the sense of having lease it or a power purchase agreement, to understand the UCC filings and what's there, keep that paperwork. And then before you go to sell, check that paperwork and what you have to do to make sure that your title is going to be clear, so that you don't go into a closing and all of a sudden the lawyer who wasn't paying enough attention says, oops, we can't do this today because we don't have this paperwork here, or we need to have a big escrow in status. So
we've seen that happen more times than most of us care to admit. If you can just imagine, and I harp on this point because it's very, very important. So like we talked about, I'm selling my house and Mary's buying it, and the house that Mary lived in, she's selling it and Joe's buying it. So it's the domino effect. Now, if I'm somebody, so let's just say I'm at the closing table, Mary and I are at the closing table with our attorneys. Someone's attorney says, wait, we don't understand this. This is a lease, or it's a power purchase agreement, or there's something going on. We don't know what to do. we're going to either stop this closing. Now, my stuff is packed. My kids' stuff is in boxes. Everything's packed. The movers are ready. I'm ready to go. You're going to tell me that I can't move. Not only me, but Mary and Joe and Bill and Susie and everybody else that's in that domino effect. That's catastrophic. There are financial consequences. So if I can't leave now, but Mary's got some other deal, I may have to pay Mary's mortgage for the month that she can't move into my house. Like, there's serious financial consequences when you don't move forward with that, or you need another 30 days or 60 days. In addition to that, in the event that the attorneys decide to leave, let's say $30,000, that's the number we've been using, they're going to leave that in escrow till they sort this out. I'm the seller. I need that $30,000 to buy my next house. The bank's not saying, oh, it's okay, we'll wait. That doesn't happen. So you have to do your homework on the front end. And it's important that you have all of the professionals in this whole transaction know from the get-go what they're doing, and that the solar is involved. So while we're adapting to the new way, it's important that we find those right people. So yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So what's next for you, Christina?
Well, I do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of teaching. I would love to be able to educate more consumers and realtors on this, this issue. My personal focus is to make sure that before I leave this earth, things are a little bit different, and those people who should be applauded for going solar are not penalized for having done so. So I'm teaching, I'm, developing curriculum. I do a bunch of really great training, and I found my passion in life. So I'm happy.
Awesome. All right. So I have to give a little clap so my audio person knows. That's the end of the short interview. And now we go into the relaxed extended interview, if that's okay with you.
It's perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So what's one big, unique value supernova that you think everybody should know, but they don't? A tactic, tip, tool, and maybe it's one of the ones you said already.
I think there are a lot of people that are considering going solar, and they usually, because this is new to them, they don't know how to get the money for it. What you should do, especially in these times where interest rates are so low, is refinance your mortgage, take a little bit of equity out of the house, pay for the solar system, and then next year you get all those tax credits back, provided, again, your finance professional says that you have an appetite for that. But people don't think of including the solar in their mortgage. It's a way better way to do it. It makes your electric bill disappear. You're paying just a little bit more. It's considerably less than your electric bill was before, and it's not going to go up. So right. That's my big, that was a big aha for me.
That's a great tip, because in addition, the interest rates on mortgages are the lowest interest rates that you're probably going to get from anywhere.
In history. Right now.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And then in comparison to any other kind of money that you can borrow. And in addition, if you don't refinance your home mortgage, you could still do a good chunk of it. Again, check with your tax advisor. Yes. But you can do a good chunk of it as a home equity. And then you get to write off the interest for as long as you're paying that mortgage or paying that home equity line, as opposed to everything else where you can't write off the interest because it's not deductible. So there's a lot of benefits. Check with your tax advisors. Makes total sense. Great supernova. Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, so a lot of us have gone through ups and downs, and a lot of people have found that some of the most successful people in their worst moments actually come to some bottom, and they realize something, and it changes the way they do everything for the rest of their life. So what was your worst clean energy moment, and what did you learn out of it?
My worst clean energy moment was when a customer at the company that I worked for at the time, who was a CPA and had gone solar, came to me and said, very early on before I started teaching, that he sold his house and the appraiser gave him $0, and the real estate agent didn't know what to do. And after all of the years that I had been trained that solar makes your home worth more money, I was just appalled. I was like, what do you mean? And when I got into real estate, I learned that in fact was true because of the lack of training. So that really propelled me to want to do something. I hadn't before been an educator. I mean, I have 4 kids, right? So I taught them lots of things. I had been a pretty good speaker, but I never intended to be an educator. And the truth is that that's really where my greatest skill set lies, and it's become my passion. So it was a blessing in disguise.
A lot of times that's the way it is, the worst times of our lives winds up being the things that we look back on and say, wow, it really wound up that was a good thing the way that happened
Yes.
after all. So yeah,
Yes.
it's funny that how life works
It
sometimes. So
is.
yeah. All right. An aha moment, the time when you got something, it was like, oh, and was that the one that you just shared before? Sorry.
Well, that was one of them. I think that, recently I've had an aha moment, and I've been doing this real estate solar education. We're looking at about 5 years now. And there were many people along the way that said, oh, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. You're wasting your time. You're spinning your wheels for no reason. And I just knew down deep that this was going to be a problem, because when these people went solar, if there was something different in the real estate transaction and nobody knew, like a UCC filing, people had to know how to deal with this. And recently I work with a title company, and they've been calling me because there have been people that were in this very horrible situation that we talked about, that their closings were halted, or they had to leave money in escrow, or their title, because their title their title insurance couldn't be procured. And I just sat back at some point, maybe 2 months ago, and I thought, I knew this, and I've trained, these people knew enough to call me. And I knew this, and it wasn't a waste of time. I never really thought that it was. It just validated it because it's happening. But at the same time, it's what I didn't want to happen. I didn't want there to be problems. But it did validate my need to go full steam ahead with this education piece. And I'm glad that I did it.
Yeah, I'm really glad too. I'll tell you, you've educated me, and I thought I knew a couple things. So.
See? We can learn stuff from everybody, right, Ron?
Absolutely,
You never
totally.
know.
Life is a learning process.
That's
I
right.
learn new things every day from
Yes.
people of all different walks in life, and I'll never think that I ever know everything. That's for darn sure. So always something new.
Exactly.
All right. The Pulsar round. This is the round where we go with short, succinct, amazing, and mind-blowing answers to these questions. Are you ready?
I hope so. Is there a prize?
There is always a prize. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received was to actually not be afraid to be myself, because I find that many of us hold back because we want to be like everybody else. And if you have some kind of special crazy, you got to embrace that special crazy. And that's the best advice that I had.
Be free to be me. Be who you are. That's
you
all
have
you
to,
got,
because
right?
otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And when you
only
can
be who
do that, it's almost like, okay, well, if that's okay, then this is okay. And now I can live the way that, that I'm intended to.
And you can't be somebody else anyway. So don't even.
It's taken. They're already that.
Takes too much energy.
Right.
So yeah, just be you. That's great advice. Nice. All right. What's one of the personal habits that contributes to your success?
I get up early, and I get a lot of stuff done in the morning before I don't want to say interrupted, but before I really get involved with the people that I work with, and, in whatever way. So getting up early allows me to really get my focus, and it helps me to accomplish a whole lot more in a day. So I think that getting up early is my final answer, Ron.
It's a great answer. And what time is early to you?
5:36.
Okay. Very good. Excellent. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I'm an early to bed, early to rise kind of guy myself.
Now, don't invite me to a party at 9:00 at night, because I'll either have to take a nap or I'll fall asleep in the soup.
Exactly. Me too. Okay, an internet resource that you'd recommend for people.
YouTube. There is nothing that you can't learn on YouTube. When I started to search for all of this solar real estate stuff, I ended up on YouTube. I found a lot of really great resources, people in the appraisal industry. There is nothing that you can't learn from YouTube. I mean,
Wow.
you can't learn, you can't exactly, you'll see me on YouTube, but you can't take the full class. I just think that YouTube is an amazing resource. When I think back when I was a kid, we had the Dewey Decimal System and the library, and that was it. And we had old info, and now we just have so much. But if you
Yeah.
don't have the patience to read, also download some books and listen while you drive. I'm a huge, Audible fan. And
Podcast. That's what a podcast is.
Mhm.
I know. That's why that more than
Yeah.
half the country listens to podcasts now.
Yeah.
And the reason is because you can do it while you're driving, while you're
Yeah.
walking, while you're exercising, while you're
Yeah.
cooking. It's an audio thing that you can just do
Right.
something
And
else
you
with.
keep
So
learning. You learn new stuff.
you learn new stuff. How cool is that, right?
But
Yeah.
for those of us that have, that were networkers before we got quarantined and are really looking forward to it again, I find that gives me such an ability to have conversations with people that I never met before, because I know a little bit about a bunch of things that I can talk about. So it makes me a much more educated conversationalist, to say the least.
Continuous learning.
That's right.
It's
Listen to Ron. Ron,
uh,
what a variety of
listen to
things you have.
Christina. Listen, there's tons of people to listen to, so it's all good. But yes, when you want clean energy, come over here. It's always a good thing. So,
That's right.
okay, would you have a book that you'd recommend to people?
Would I have a what?
A book, a particular book.
Yes. So I am a huge fan. When I started on my journey to find out the how and the why, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago, I started to do some training, and my book that I have read hundreds of times, excerpts of it. I have a quote on my wall. I don't know if you can see it, but over here is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Oh,
It is the Entrepreneur's Bible. It was written by a man, I feel like it was in the 20s, when you couldn't just fly somewhere or drive somewhere. He was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie to find out what makes people successful. And there are certain components to success that hold true in every person, that regardless of the time or the space or the environment that they grew up in, certain things made them successful. And it's simple. It's just not easy. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That is my book.
outstanding. And you're the second interviewee this week to quote that
Really?
book. Another successful entrepreneurial
Right.
business person. Yes. They were from Jersey, though, so their accent is slightly different from your
Little bit
Long
different.
Island accent.
A little bit different. So even though I live on Long Island, I am from Howard Beach in Queens. So that's kind of the Brooklyn border.
Mm-hmm.
So they can tell the difference. Now my Howard Beach people can tell the difference. Like, you moved and you talk different now. And the Long Island people knew that I was from Queens. They figured it out. But anytime I travel anywhere else in the world, they immediately assume that I'm from Brooklyn. And they tell me that I sound like the girl in My Cousin Vinny, which is Mercy.
That's so funny. So I lived upstate for 30 years, and still to this day, 40 years later now, I still got my New York accent, and I can't go anywhere in the world without
No.
people picking me out and knowing
They
that
do.
I'm from New York.
Usually in
Okay.
the elevator, I find that because I'm friendly and I say hello to people and then I say something else and like, Brooklyn? So yeah, that
Yeah.
always happens.
That's a funny
But
thing.
good.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. If you had a magic wand and could wave it and change one thing for everyone in the world, what would it be?
That they would know that they could be, do, or have anything that they set their mind to. I think that most of us, certainly I was until, I figured this out. We're all afraid of something. We're afraid of failure. And you can't get to the other side of failure unless you actually fail. So don't be afraid of it. Just keep going. Don't quit. So yeah, if people were less afraid, if I could wave that magic wand, I would give them all the confidence to know that it's all going to be fine.
That's great. And along that lines, there's an old, I think it's a Japanese Asian saying that fall down 7 times, get up 8.
Yes.
So just keep at it and keep
Yes.
at it. And failure is a part of life. Learn from
Yes.
it and move on. And
Yes.
yep, you can accomplish
You
anything.
know, I don't know. I'm quoting, but I'm not giving credit. There is someone who gave the 3 phases of an idea. So you come to someone, a friend or family, and of course they are out looking out for your best interest. And the first thing that they say when you tell them whatever your idea is they say, "That's a horrible idea. It'll never work. You'll starve." And then when it starts to work, they say, "Well, it may work out, but it's going to cost you a lot of money, and you won't be able to live." And but they agree that maybe it's a good idea. And then when you're successful, people say, "I always knew that was a great idea. I knew you were going to be successful.
I told you that you
I
should do
told
that.
you that." So if you're looking for that, so many of us are entrepreneurial. If you're looking for that from the beginning, don't. Just know it from inside. You have to have that determination. Read the book, Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich. There we go. Excellent. Okay, WTF or F, weather time fudge or weather time fun, an extreme weather event that you lived through and tell the tale, or the most fun you ever had and the type of weather it was when you did it.
Well, I think that if the most extreme weather event was Hurricane Sandy, which affected us here in New York, Long Island, Queens, in 2012. So it's 8 years ago. And it wasn't fun. I was separated from my kids, who were mostly adults by then. And there was one weather guy named Adam Toxin. I got to give him his props, who called it that it was going to be that bad. And I remember trying to convince my one son to go with his brother because I was afraid that he would drown in the basement apartment where he lived. And it ended up, I pushed it and I pushed it and I pushed it. And it worked out okay for everybody. I mean, my son got 7 feet of water in his house, but my other son that was there, because I was afraid he was going to drown in the basement, was there to help him. So in the end, everybody was together. When you know something, I just, I was doing my mom thing, I think. So that was the biggest weather event, I think, for me.
Yeah, Sandy was a pretty incredible storm, and unfortunately, we're seeing more and more extreme weather events as the climate continues to be disrupted by all the greenhouse gases that we're
Yep.
7 billion of us are saturating it with. So that's why this move to clean energy is so important.
And simple if you know how to do it.
Simple but not easy.
Simple but not easy.
Okay, what's
Could
the
be
one
easy.
thing? It could
Just
be
takes
easy.
a minute of work.
Yeah, you could definitely make it easier.
Mhm.
So sure. All right, what's the one thing you're most energized about today?
Most energized about. I taught a train the trainer class yesterday, and I'm still kind of revved up from that. I'm really focused on empowering other people with the knowledge that I've accumulated so far. And I almost feel like, as I'm getting older, I'm not ready for the heap yet, but as I'm getting older, passing that knowledge about success, how to get there, how not to quit, and how to empower others and be able to teach them so that they can understand. That's a big thing for me. So I'm kind of still riding that from yesterday.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, empowering other people is always a very energizing type of
It
activity.
is.
Excellent. Okay, a piece of parting advice and ways for people to get a hold of you if you'd like them to.
Parting advice is when doing home improvements, please do your homework before you do the improvement. People can get in touch with me through Leap EDU. So it's www.leapedu.com. You'll see the Becoming a Solar Specialist and Green EDU. You can find me in there. You can Google me, Christina Matheson, Mathieson. Plenty of stuff comes up. You're going to put the link or something on the screen?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we'll put it all up. Yep, we'll have the links. We'll have different ways of reaching you,
Yep.
which would be great.
And the school that I teach at, Leap EDU, you can email info@leapedu.com to get a hold of me.
Outstanding. Anything I should have asked you that I didn't that you'd like to respond or say something about?
No, I mean, the one thing that I would like to ask anybody that listens to this podcast is, quite frankly, if you are able to help us make some change where we can educate more people, please reach out, because I believe that this is a consumer protection issue at this point. We want those people that we helped go solar because it's better for them. We want them to really reap the rewards of their investment or their belief in clean energy. And we don't want them to be penalized because those around them, in especially in the real estate field, haven't been educated. They're very, very smart people. They just need to know more. So if you're one of those people that can help us, reach out. info@leapedu.com.
Outstanding. Christina Matheson, this, what do they call you?
The Solar Lady of Real Estate.
The Solar Lady of Real Estate. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ron.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye, everybody.
Bye.